the Trump administration has just announced that it is strongly considering issuing stimulus checks of up to $5,000 to roughly 79 million tax-paying Americans. The idea came from James Fishback. He's an investor for X.com. Here goes. Few in America knew precisely what to expect from Doge. The early perceived turbulence around leadership, uncertainty around legal structure, and the lack of precedent for such a bold initiative created a sense of show me with Doge. Just a month into President Trump's second term, Doge is delivering full stop. This is coming from a dude who is an investor in X, as I said before. So they're aiming, Doge being they, is aiming to save the federal government $2 trillion in government government spending. So rooting out waste, rooting out all types of expenditures that the federal government is incurring, mostly by selling or sending money overseas. I should say selling because I don't know what they get back in return. I guess slavery and keeping their heels on everyone. But what's happening is that they're trying to take care of everybody else's problems, nonetheless, they're not taking care of the issues that people are encountering in this country. So here's how President Trump's Doge dividend works. This man, Fishback, is proposing a dividend. So out of the $2 trillion, pay back 20% to the American people. So that's $400 billion. And return to the 79 million U.S. households that will not payers of federal income tax in CY 2025 as a tax refund check called the Doge dividend. $400 billion in Doge-driven savings divided by $79 million tax-paying households equals $5,000, roughly. My number calculated a number of around 5,063. I don't want them to keep the change. Let me get those 63 bones. That's good for a brunch somewhere. Absolutely, especially with the discount, with the veterans discount and all that. So definitely hop on it. So basically, Trump confirmed that he is seriously considering this. Take a look.
There's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the Doge savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% down to pay back debt and pay down debt, which is, if you look at value, if it were a real estate balance sheet, the debt is tiny, but we still want to pay it down. Doesn't matter. We don't look at it as a piece of real estate. It's America. We're going to get it down through intelligence, hard work, and as Elon said, a word called caring. You have to care. By doing this, Americans will tell us where there's waste. They'll be reporting it themselves. They participate in the process of saving money.
So they're seriously considering this thing, and now you've got legislators left and right talking about that this is going to be inflationary, that this is going to increase inflation, right? But whenever they're giving out billions of dollars, for instance, $1.25 billion in weapons to Ukraine, pushing to get aid out before Biden leaves office back in December, no one is crying that this is inflationary, how they're giving out money left and right. Watch. Was it 24 billion to Ukraine so far? Look, 55 billion. This is in 2022. The United States announced more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance to address food insecurity and other needs in Africa. What about food insecurity here in the States? There are people that have called me. They've got like 16 bones in their bank account, and yet they're trying to explain how the U.S. plans to commit $15.5 billion to Africa over 3 years. This is just absolutely ridiculous. And here are the people that are talking against it. Doge stimulus checks. Johnson sidesteps questions on Trump plan, says U.S. has giant deficit.
President Trump's new Small Business Administration chief promising to do her part to save taxpayers' money. Former Georgia Republican Senator
So this is about the lady that I told you about on the video earlier today, Kelly Loeffler, who is emphasizing what are the grant programs that under her watch, the Small Business Administration will support and fund. But Speaker Mike Johnson from Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken with that abbreviation, signaled he was not a fan of a proposal to send American stimulus checks with the money saved by the Department of Government Efficiency, and that he believed the funding was better directed toward the national debt. So this is a debt that now they want to pay attention to once they talk about giving money directly in the hands of the American people. Well, look, I mean, politically, that would be great for us, because that gives everybody a check, Johnson said during a Q&A session at the Conservative Political Action Conference on Thursday. But if you think about our core principles, right, fiscal responsibility is what we do as conservatives. That's our brand, and we have $36 trillion in federal debt. Johnson added there was a giant deficit. So they've been spending the money. So they prefer to pay off their debt before helping Americans with potentially another $5,000 so they can pay off their own personal debts and obligations, which is over $838 billion for fiscal year 2025 so far, according to the bipartisan policy. Okay. It comes after the president said he was considering giving 20% of Doge-led savings back to U.S. Billionaire Elon Musk, who is leading Doge, said Tuesday on X he would check with the president about the proposal. It was first floated by Azoria investment firm CEO James Fishback. During sit-down remarks with Newsmax on Thursday, Johnson also warned that Americans could see the largest tax increase in U.S. history if Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was not extended before measures. Congressional Republicans are trying to use their majorities to extend Trump's tax cuts and pass his priorities. Under reconciliation, both the Senate and House operate in a simple majorities and on the power to pass. So if they're going to do anything, as Elon Musk said in so many words, they're about to do damage, they need to do it now because they are responsible for the wins in the House and the Senate, the majority that they sustain all over the place. Trump sounds off on Zelensky's insults as U.S. works to broker Ukraine peace deal. So they're trying to broker U.S. peace deal right here. Spar over trans athletes. Senate Republicans approved budget framework over Democratic objections after all-night votes. I just had it out. So this is how much money that, according to DogeTracker.com, Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, has saved in tax dollars, $51.7 billion. So they're aiming to hike this number up to $2 trillion. They're still on the hunt, and they're actively hiring people, programmers and people that works with data, to ensure that they are able to find $2 trillion in waste, to root out waste. A Doge dividend is a bad idea. Trump may cut checks anyway. This is coming from the Intelligencer, from the New Yorker. Congressional Republicans who are watching anxiously as Elon Musk's Doge usurps their control over federal programs have had the consolation of assuming that whatever savings he might generate by beating up on federal employees and killing programs and services that sound vaguely woke would be at least lighten their own budgetary burdens. Spending reduced by executive fiat is spending Congress won't have to cut legislatively. In order to reduce debts and deficits, unfortunately for deficit hawks and tax cutters, Musk seems to be taken with a very different idea, Doge dividend. Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency Task Force claims to be slashing the federal government. Musk said he would escalate the idea of a Doge dividend, saying, "We'll check with the president." The post came in a reply to suggestion by James Fishback, the CEO and co-founder of right-leaning investment firm Azoria. The company last year launched an anti-woke ETF that excluded companies that prioritize DEI hiring. Musk reacted to this idea by saying, "We'll check with the president." So that's how basically it started.
This should be called the Fishback discount. That's the guy who came up with it. It came from James Fishback, an investor who's one of the advisors to Doge. And he said, you know what we should do? When we save all this money, we should give some of it back to the American family. Let's do 20%. We hit our $2 trillion target. That'll be $5,000 each. Sounds great. Musk said, I'll take it to president. So with the president, he loves the idea. Remember during the pandemic, he wanted to sign everybody's check. It wasn't even his money. It won't be this time either. But what a great idea. Can they do it? Should they do it? Let's bring in the man who deserves the credit for the idea, James Fishback. There he is. So could you have ever imagined when you...
This is the man who is proposing this plan.
First suggested this idea, that you would be here with me discussing why President Trump is saying that this is now definitely going to happen.
Well, Chris, good evening. It is a humbling and honoring day to have the president's endorsement on this idea. I'm appreciative of the credit, but I got to tell you the truth. The credit goes to President Trump. Doge, this savings would not be possible without his leadership. We put it to paper, but President Trump is going to be the one to execute it, and he deserves the credit for it.
So, James, Bill O'Reilly doesn't want the check. I want the check. I'll take his check, too. I don't know how it works. But here's the thing. As you know, right, you're an investor, and you know when you sit at the table, people want you to underpromise and overdeliver, okay? The idea, why? Because then they're happy with the surprise. Here, isn't there a concern that setting that target of $2 trillion is way too high? And that people think they're going to get $5 grand, but now if you don't get the $2 trillion, they don't get the $5 grand.
Well, it's interesting, Chris. I don't think it's actually too high. I think it's totally reasonable. But here's the thing. The Doge dividend check that President Trump endorsed today, that is going to help us get the $2 trillion, and here's why. We're going to incentivize everyday Americans, whether they're in East Palestine or in East Baltimore, to step up and say, there's waste, there's fraud, there's abuse in my community. Report it to Doge. Why? Because the more money the Doge saves, the bigger the Doge dividend check is. Chris, look at how successful Doge has been under Trump's leadership, with just Elon Musk and a dozen engineers eating Chick-fil-A and drinking Red Bull, sleeping in the office. Now imagine deputizing 100 million Americans to be the eyes and ears on the ground. When I was growing up, I took my grandfather, a World War II vet, to the VA for his checkups. And I got to tell you, I saw waste, I saw fraud, I saw abuse. I didn't have Doge to report it to, and I didn't have an incentive to report it. That's not the case with the Doge dividend. Every American can step up, report fraud and abuse to Doge directly via X, and we'll see the savings go up, hit $2 trillion, and we'll see the checks dispersed next summer. And absolutely, President Trump's name and signature should be on it, because this would not have been possible without his leadership.
I like the idea, obviously, of finding waste, fraud, and abuse, and I like to see something, say something extension. As you know, there are lots of different places people can go to alert the government to what's going on. Whether or not they do anything about it is where you're promising that Doge will be different. My other question is, isn't the point, though, what Musk brought up later in the day after the first flush of this idea, which is this has got to go towards the fiscal crisis that this country is in. Everybody wants a check, of course. I'm not saying no check. But what matters more? Sending a check to people or lowering the deficit and trying to make a dent in the trillions and trillions that we owe in debt?
We can do both. We absolutely can do both, Chris. We're $37 trillion in debt, which is why our proposal calls for 80% of that going to pay down the debt and only 20% going directly to taxpayers. Let's not forget, this isn't a handout. This was taxpayers' money that was sent to D.C. in the first place. It wasn't sent to D.C. to then be quickly sent to Myanmar for a DEI musical or Colombia for a transgender opera. It was sent to D.C. to support Americans. And guess what? The American heartland is crumbling. Our roads and bridges are in despair, and veterans everywhere you look are being denied essential health care. And so the American people deserve compensation, deserve restitution. That's the first point. The second point is we need to restore the trust between taxpayer and her government. We can never balance the budget if the taxpayer feels cheated. And guess what? They do, given what Doge has exposed in just the past month. Chris, we're 1 month into Doge, and under Trump's leadership, we've already saved $55 billion. Let's let this experiment run for another year and a half, get to $2 trillion, and send every American a check for $5,000 saying, we are back, the government is accountable, respectful, and honest again. That is what the golden age is all about.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your...
I got a proposal for you. Why don't they just start paying you, piecing you off with what could total $5 grand, or as someone just wrote, 10 grand. In order for them to pay out 10 grand under this proposed plan, they would have to find $4 trillion in waste, because this is how it works. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's $4 trillion times 0.2, right? Which will give you, if I'm not mistaken, this is $80 million, okay? It's $80 billion, excuse me. Yep, $80 billion. 1, 2, and 3, $800 billion, I'm sorry. And that's 20% divided by 79 million. 123 taxpayers, federal income taxpayers. Okay? So that would give you $10,126. So they would have to find $4 trillion in waste. But as I was getting to, perhaps they should just start piecing you off. For every single $1 billion, you get a check, perhaps $100 or whatever. And you get that check if you help disclose that. And we'll work together to go ahead and find where exactly that waste is going to. It's not going to be that hard to find if everybody works collectively. Nonetheless, you can't wait until you find the complete $2 trillion to start to pay people and break people off. Start piecing us off out the jump. We need paper right now. Eggs are like $1 a piece right now. Look at all the obligations the federal government has with over 200 countries worldwide. $68 billion. This dashboard reports obligations in current US dollars. Obligations are binding agreements that will result in outlays immediately or in the future. Budget resources must be available before obligations can be legally incurred. 15,000 activities. I told you about 3 grant programs that the SBA is still funding. Now, there's more grant programs packaged in everything that I told you about earlier today, which is why if you want to work with me, go ahead and join the wait list. The link is in the video description below, and we can discuss how we can meet your money making objectives. So you don't depend on solely requesting money from the government and they play around with you, because they are playing around now. So it's going, this is for fiscal year 2024, okay? You got $39 billion in obligations, less, okay? Less countries, but this shouldn't amount to more than 10 countries or something. I mean, I know that you can't completely alienate allies, but you have to focus on ensuring that you make the American people whole before you start helping anyone else resolve whatever issues that they are encountering. Because if you have division, polarity, you have people that they can't even talk about politics because they can't even invite each other over for holidays because everything is just bonkers. Everything just sucks either way that you vote. You have to ensure that you take care of the people, right? Doge is claiming $55 billion in savings so far, right? Contract savings, USAID, Department of Education, OPM, Office of Personnel Management, HHS, USDA, Department of Agriculture, DHS, GSA, Commerce. They're finding all this wastes being spent right here. They just found 21,000 here, 255,000 there. Where's my paper? Understand?
Taxpayers billions.
And this is Donald Trump confirming that he's actually considering this deal.
Saving taxpayers billions and billions of dollars every single day. And there's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the Doge savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% down to pay back debt and pay down debt.
I'm with it.
We are
Anything
a group
that
of
goes
concerned
back
citizens who
to
want
Americans' pockets to ensure that you pay down your debts, to you ensure that you pay down your obligations, I'm all with it. And plus, this is your paper, because this is money that's you paid for in taxes from all sources. Like, for instance, if you're in New York, you're paying out about $1,000 per person in federal taxes that goes out to other states, because other states are just empty and dead in terms of the amount of shopping in comparison to what happens in these bigger states. I'm not saying that New York is better for that. I mean, New York, they don't even take care of themselves. You got the infrastructure crumbling all over the place. You drive up I-95 and you got clear roads with practically no potholes. Once you hit the Belt Parkway, you're jumping and going all over the place, damaging your car, running into potholes. So they're not doing much with the paper. Why are they sending money overseas if they haven't taken care of this country right here, ensuring that it gets in the best state possible, physically, digitally, on the forefront of everything. Will I get a Doge dividend check? Don't count on $5,000 government stimulus, says financial experts. It's wildly unfeasible, one Yale economist says, of an idea being floated by Elon Musk to claw back large sums of money for American taxpayers. I don't know why it's unfeasible. What they last did was inflationary because they printed money to give out money, which they had to do. And they didn't do it as a priority to save people. They did it to save organizations that didn't have the customers or didn't have customers with money to spend on them, because all that money went back to all of these major organizations. They gave out loans, right? Oh, we're lending money to all of these publicly traded organizations. And we're, quote, giving the money, a piece of it, out to the American people so you could spend it on these organizations. That'll probably be the end game in this particular case as well. I mean, if they could find more trillions in waste and give out even more money, I'm all for it. Because again, it's money that you paid out to the government. And even if it's more, even if it's, you should have the ability to take some or allow them to expand it so you can go ahead and purchase a home. So you could do anything that you need to do to finance your business and to save and provide for your loved ones and to meet and bring to life your noble motives. Who wouldn't want a Doge dividend? Such an idea is evidently being floated at the highest levels of government. Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, is currently slashing through the federal budget in what it says is an effort to weed out waste and fraud, lower the budget deficit, and claw money back for the taxpayers. As part of that one idea that made its way to Elon Musk, who is or perhaps is not leading Doge, was that some of the savings that Doge is finding could be returned to taxpayers in the form of $5,000 checks or Doge dividends or stimulus, as some are calling them. On X this week, Musk said that he would check with the president about doing it, and President Trump himself has said since he's open to the idea. Could Doge even send out checks? While the infrastructure exists to send checks to taxpayers, the executive branch can't do so on its own. Congress would need to step up first, says Zachary Liskow, a professor of law at Yale Law School, who served as chief economist at the Office of Management and Budget at the White House in 2022. Now, you've got President Trump and people who have opposed him politically on his side of the political spectrum. They lose. They start to lose support from the Republican Party because he is the poster child of conservatism, of everything that is read from a political standpoint. So he could use his political power to ensure that Congress falls in line and legislatively approve a deal like this. Now, if they manufacture a crisis and have to put something like this in order, that's another story, right? I had a story here that I wanted to show you. Speaker Mike Johnson weighs in on Doge stimulus checks, prefers paying off national debt. Why would you prefer to pay off national debt? The debt was created by Congress, by you, by your predecessors for decades, and you prefer to pay off a debt that you got the country into as opposed to allowing Americans to get above water, to get in the black, in so many words. Well, that's the same video we saw before. So, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson tapped down the idea of Doge stimulus checks, adding he would prefer to pay the national debt. Okay, so Mike Johnson, right? Mike Johnson, Congressman Mike Johnson, is a Republican for the 4th District in 2017. Investment firm CEO James Fishback proposed the idea of stimulus checks sparked by Doge actions. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he supported stimulus checks funded with 20% of Doge's claimed savings. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson did not appear to be in favor of stimulus checks spurred by Doge actions during the 2025 Conservative Political Action Conference. The Louisiana Republican rolled his eyes when the idea of stimulus checks prompted by the Department of Government Efficiency was met with applause from the audience on Thursday. Politically, that would be great for us, because everybody gets a check, Johnson said to the crowd. But if you think about our core principles, right, fiscal responsibility is what we do as conservatives. Your core principles, as if that has to remain in a sense where you establish those principles along certain conditions that you've encountered, and now the conditions have completely changed. The American people are in need for some form of assistance. You've spent the money overseas, and now you don't want to spend it here. There's no problem once they're cutting checks to send them abroad, to Ukraine, to Africa, to Colombia, where my family comes from, right? But now, when they're talking about giving money to the American people, all kinds of complaints pop up from both sides of the aisle. But if you think about our core principles, right, fiscal responsibility is what we do as conservatives, right? Because we're conservative. That's our brand. They're treating this as if they're a company. And we have a $36 trillion federal debt. We have a giant deficit that we're contending with. I think we need to pay down the credit. Listen, your principle, Mr. Johnson, and every single person who is a politician is to become as popular as possible. That's what these politicians haven't grasped, which is why Trump whooped that ass, bottom line. And Elon Musk now backing the person that made the platform formerly known as Twitter a household name. They know that popularity, attention, is the highest valued commodity in 2025. That's all your, quote, principles should rely on if you're aiming to be successful in ensuring that you lead your people to be above water in order to have a sustainable government where everyone is showing prosperity. President Donald Trump expressed interest in the stimulus checks earlier this week. The president said during the Saudi-sponsored F2 Priority Summit on Wednesday that the federal government was considering using 20% of Doge savings to create stimulus checks and another 20% to pay down national debt, which as of Friday sat at $36.2 trillion. Trump's support came the same day as USA Today reporting found the Doge website published misleading information about how much money it has saved, including a nearly $8 billion error. Doge's documented contracts, grants, and real estate licenses on the website amounted to about $16.5 billion. So they're talking about that the Doge has not found $55 billion in waste. How did talks of a Doge stimulus check come about? So if they're about $8 billion off, that Doge tracker seems to be close to being on target at around $50 billion. How did talks of a Doge stimulus check come about? The concept of Doge stimulus check. Okay, so I told you about the background. The federal government has not confirmed plans to issue a Doge-related stimulus check. Well, the federal government, the executive branch, is led by this man right here. So what is USA talking about? The federal government has not confirmed plans. You mean some type of agency, so that reporting is incomplete. The Department of Government Efficiency, officially the U.S. Doge Service, temporary organization is federal government. Okay, what is Doge? So they're just dropping what Doge is. I guess that's for search engine optimization points so they can welcome more traffic from the search engines. You may be shocked at who doesn't qualify. Now, there's an argument that many low-income taxpayers will not receive a check because you don't pay federal income tax. But you should be filing your tax return because regardless of what, even if you don't generate any revenue, you still have a standard deduction that will allow you not to pay federal income tax while you're still paying that income tax. You see, you're still declaring that standard deduction and you're still filing taxes and you're showing as if you are a taxpayer. So you would qualify for that, even if you are a very low income individual. Understand? I've spoken to some people, you're not even filing tax returns, which is bonkers. Understand what I'm saying? You're still able to do that as long as you make some money, right? If you don't make enough, I mean, still you have a pretty large tax standard deduction that'll knock off what you have to pay. New stimulus checks for New Jersey. What is this coming from? This is some New Jersey checks. I don't know what they're talking about. This is something different, I believe. Toll scofflaws. No, this is something else. I don't even know why they're coming up with stimulus. So this is something that you have to pay attention to very closely in order to ensure that you don't get your hopes up with fake news. So what's Fox talking about it? I know that, let me see, stimulus checks. They're also talking about other legislators that are mad. Biden announced a $770 stimulus checks for wildfire. So we saw that. Do you qualify in Senate's federal government doled out? Where's the Doge checks? The Doge checks. Top federal agency with history. See, they start complaining about this stuff right here. So let me see. Is there a reconciliation in place to extend tax cuts and pass its priority in defense of the border via a massive bill using the budget reconciliation process? So that may be in the conversations as well while they're doing this budget reconciliation. Okay, so here we go. Who else is talking about it? Trump stimulus check. Musk confirms Trump Doge dividend check support, sparking wild Bitcoin and crypto price speculation. Bitcoin and crypto prices have surged higher, climbing despite fears of price suppression. The Bitcoin prices surged toward $100,000 per Bitcoin, bouncing back after falling to just over $90,000. Now, that's because investors may see this as inflationary. Oh, they're going to start printing out money again, and the dollar is not going to be worth as much once they start to print out these checks. Now, after Elon Musk was pitched a Bitcoin fix to questions over the U.S. gold reserves, Musk has confirmed supports the idea of sending Doge Department of Government Efficiency dividend checks to U.S. taxpayers, potentially boosting the Bitcoin price. Musk has confirmed. What did he confirm? Let's take a look. I talked to the president, and he is supportive of the idea. Musk, who is leading the Doge Department of Government Efficiency, told the Conservative Political Action Conference. Okay, so he said it right here. We didn't even take a look at that one. So that was the Political Action Conference. He may have put it on his, it sounds like it's something we are going to do, Musk added earlier this week. Trump said he's considering a new concept where we give 20% of the Doge savings. Oh, that's Trump saying that. I talked to the president. He's supportive of that idea. So they put this on FT. They don't let me read it. Let's see if we can take a quick look. Well, that's going to take too long. I don't want to keep you. Sounds like the idea we're going to earlier this week. So he's okay. So both Musk and Trump, they're considering it. So the co-presidents, they added, baby. Musk, who set the cost-cutting Doge loose on the U.S. federal government after Trump moved back into the White House, seized on the idea of sending a Doge dividend check to U.S. taxpayers after it was floated on X by investor James Fishback. All right, so he's not an ex-investor. I misread that. President Trump and Elon Musk should announce a Doge dividend, a tax refund check sent to every taxpayer, funded exclusively with a portion of the total savings delivered by Doge. Fishback posted alongside a document outlining his plan for households to receive $5,000 each if Doge achieved its ambitious aim of cutting $2 trillion from government spending. If you bought Bitcoin with your $1,200 stimulus check on April 15, 2020, it would be worth approximately $17,315 today, February 20th, 2025. YouTuber Ryan Mata posted, this reflects a 1,343 increase. What will you do with your $5,000 Doge checks? So in 2021, they flooded the economy with cash, sending the U.S. debt spiraling and helping to send inflation to multi-decade highs as people use checks to pump the price of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which rocketed to all-time highs. Yeah, but why don't you mention how the printing of billions of dollars to bail out too big to fail publicly traded companies inflated the economy, even more so than the amount of money that they gave out to Americans. And regardless of what, it all went back to these organizations because people came out of their pockets for sneakers, even for necessary items. And you did not let the American people buy from small businesses. Everyone else was forced to shut down, while Amazon's raking in all that stimulus money. So is Walmart. So is Home Depot, under the guise of providing essential services, while mom and pop shops who also provided, quote, essential services were not allowed to operate. All of these major organizations, BJ's, Costco, publicly traded, that have lobbyists that are paying out money, kicking back to politicians on a regular basis, they were allowed to operate freely. So getting all of this money, this stimulus money that came in the form of loans, pennies on the dollar that they paid back with our money, that didn't cause inflation? See, this is crazy. So this is hypocrisy coming from the media, hypocrisy coming from politicians all over the place. However, Doge checks or Doge dividend might not have a similar effect on the Bitcoin price and crypto market as stimulus checks did in 2020. The market isn't in the same place, and they're not going to give it out anytime soon. That's just my projection. It's not going to happen right now because they would have to, based off of these guidelines, find $2 trillion in fraudulent or wasteful spending. They're not up to that number yet. They're at 55 billion right now. So at this particular rate, what? It's been roughly a month and 55 billion to get to 1 trillion. That take 20 more months. I think they're projecting to find the 2 trillion by 2026. So roughly 2 years from now. What, 2027? At this rate, unless they speed it up. Of course, if you go to the Doge website, they are hiring, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, right here, join. The Doge team is looking for world-class talent to work long hours, identifying, eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. These are full-time salaried positions for software engineers, InfoSec engineers, and other technology professionals. So you got to have a GitHub. You can submit an application if you want to work for the federal government in finding this fraudulent or wasteful use of federal government funds. Right here, Doge. So if they are able to recruit more people, then perhaps they can get it out as quickly as possible. So, I mean, that's basically it. You got crazy hypocrisy, nothing new, coming from both sides of the aisle. Could Trump really give money from Musk's Doge cuts to taxpayers? An idea first proposed on social media has bubbled up to the White House and received President Donald Trump's enthusiastic endorsement. Take some of the savings from billionaire Elon Musk's drive to cut government spending and return it to taxpayers. Love it, Trump said late Wednesday on Air Force One when asked about the proposal. If Musk's target of $2 trillion in spending cuts is achieved by next year, that's 2026, that's when they're aiming to do it. Supporters of the idea say that about 1/5 of those funds could be distributed to tax-paying households in checks of about $5,000. So you're probably looking at the checks in what? Your 2026? Well, they got to finish in 2026. So if they finish in 2026, then you could claim it on your 2026 tax return and get the money what? In the form of a tax refund in 2027. But before you start planning for a windfall, budget experts say such huge savings, nearly 1/3 of the federal government's annual spending, are highly unlikely. And sending out a round of checks similar to the stimulus payments distributed by Trump and then President Joe Biden during the pandemic could fuel inflation, economists warn about. Though White House officials dismissed that concern. Actually, 20 months, that's like almost 4 years for them to find that amount of money, $2 trillion, if they do it at this particular rate. Again, if they are able to recruit more people and just put the jump on ensuring that they find this waste and incentivize the American people to also help dig out this waste. Listen, if there's a check behind it, but I mean, looking forward, what, 5 Gs? It's not a lot of money. They're paying more people to do it on a full-time basis. Again, it should be on a pay per performance basis. Throw me, I don't know, $100 for every amount of waste that I'm able to identify. I'm able to do that within a few minutes, within an hour's time. If I'm able to find $1 billion in waste within an hour's time, 100 bones, not bad. Would you do it? Let me know in the chat section. If they would give you $100 for every $1 billion of waste you're able to dig up. But before you start planning for a windfall, budget experts say such huge savings, nearly 1/3 of the federal government's annual spending, are highly unlikely. And sending out a round of checks similar to the stimulus payments distributed by Trump and then President Joe Biden during the pandemic could fuel inflation, economists warn, though White House officials dismissed that concern. Now, they're able to save $2 trillion, $100 per $1 billion. That's not bad. That's a crazy return on the investment. I may just drop a petition. Who's really willing to sign that? Go ahead and drop it in the comments in the chat section. We'll go ahead and sign a petition. 100 bones per $1 billion. That's a crazy return on investment. And if you're able to identify that in an hour's time, which with some digging you may be able to do, maybe prompt ChatGPT or Grok in this particular case, whatever AI system using DeepSeek to put together an app that'll help you identify that waste too. I mean, that's not a bad return on the investment if you can get $1 billion in savings paying somebody $100 with the annual budget deficit at $1.8 trillion last year, and Trump proposing extensive tax cuts. There will also be significant pressure to use all the savings to reduce that deficit rather than pass on part of it. Yeah, now they want to reduce the deficit, and they don't even want to deal. They didn't even want to do it, right? So you're going to get pressure. Where are you going to get pressure? You're going to get pressure from both sides of the aisle. Here's what to know about the proposal. That's when they start caring about the debt. Right? But when it comes down to giving billions out to Ukraine and billions out to what? Billions out to Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken. Billion to Taiwan. Taiwan considered multi-billion-dollar arms purchase. If it was it Taiwan? Yeah, look. The U.S. approves $2 billion in arms sales to Taiwan. Okay, so they got money from Taiwan. They were giving out crazy paper. I remember I had dropped a video, matter of fact, not too long ago, where, $59 million to illegal undocumented migrants. Somebody was like telling me about it, and she's acting, or the person was acting as if I didn't know about this. Look, $59 million grants for illegal migrants, $0 for reparations to foundational Black Americans, right? So, bam, $59 million right there. That's only a piece of it. People got fired for it or what have you. What else? There's another one right here that I want you to take a look at. Bang, bang, bang. Easily hack your mind right here. Hurricane Helene. Yeah, so let me see. Grant winner, 30 days to unlimited business funding. It escapes me right now, but yeah, they were dropping like, it was like $8 billion in a week's time that they were just giving out. Crazy amount of money going overseas. Nobody on either side of the aisle, Republican or Democrat, complaining. And it was like, I'm telling you, it's like billions of dollars they're just giving out on a regular basis. It's like trick or treat for every single country other than the citizens of the United States of America. It went out to different organizations. Right now, the countries escape me. I know Ukraine is the one that's always the top of mind, nonetheless. But they gave out, $1 billion in aid. They just put billion aid, right? Trump's claim on Ukraine spending. U.S. figures do not support Trump claims on Ukraine spending. So they're fact-checking the amount of money that Trump claims is going out to Ukraine. You see it every week. U.S. is giving Ukraine $350 billion in aid, but where is the money? So maybe it's not $350 billion. U.S. provided Ukraine with $100 billion in aid, not $500 billion, Zelensky says. Regardless of what, that's $100 billion, Chief. That pays off a fourth, 25% of the $5,000 Doge check that they're talking about. Just go ahead and slash that. If you wouldn't have, if there are no savings involved, right, then how much more would that $100 billion balloon towards? What, $1 trillion in aid to Ukraine eventually? Billions of dollars at stake for farmers hit by the Trump funding freeze. Now, that's another thing. Let me just clear that up while I've got everybody on the line. Well, not everyone, because it only goes out to proportion of the people that watch. You, yes, you, my beloved viewers. But the OMB, which is the Office of Management and Budgeting under the Trump administration, rescinded the funding freeze. And the funding freeze was not for money that was going to individuals, for SNAP benefits, for Medicaid, for assistance that's going to people, Social Security. They weren't freezing funding for that. They were mostly freezing what they've been determining as DEI. Now, many grant organizations may have gotten scared, and that's why everything is in an uproar. Nonetheless, money also confirmed by the newly confirmed administrator of the Small Business Administration to businesses was not affected as well. You still have grant programs open, such as the SBIR, STTR, USDA grants for farmers in rural America. So look, Australia provides 1.5. So that's coming from Australia, right? And look, see, because Ukraine, that's why it's always top of mind. Ukraine always pops up, right? There's another country I remember. There was money going out to, I think it was Israel, if I'm not mistaken. There are other ones, man. Listen, U.S. aid Israel in 4 charts right here. Receiving about $310 billion in total economic. Now, why they don't say anything about the money going to Israel? This is coming from the Council on Foreign Relations. Israel has long been the leading recipient of U.S. foreign aid, including military assistance. And they're always beefing with everybody. They're causing drama left and right. And the United States is coming out of its pockets to bail them out. Israel's been the largest cumulative recipient of U.S. foreign aid since its founding, receiving about $310 billion adjusted for inflation and total economic and military assistance. The United States has also provided large foreign aid packages to other Middle Eastern countries, particularly Iraq, Egypt, but Israel stands apart. Look, $300 billion in aid, right? Since 1946, nonetheless. So, comparably speaking, I don't think that Zelensky's going to get more paper now, especially if he's beefing with Musk, leader of the free world. Israel, look, 300 billion, 80 billion. 80 billion what? This economic? All right, so $80 billion in economic with military, 300 billion. Okay, so 300 billion. I got it. Right here, Egypt gets all this money. Look at the billions of dollars they're just giving out right here. Constant in 2022 dollars. Money to Turkey right here. 52 billion. Look at all the money that the United States gives out. The United States provided Israel considerable economic assistance from 1971 to 2007, but nearly all U.S. aid today goes to support Israel's military, the most advanced in the region. The United States has provisionally agreed via a memorandum of understanding to provide Israel with $3.8 billion per year through 2028. Now, I want to know how this money 10x's in the pockets of every single American. Because if it's not doing so, we are not a government of the people, by the people. And I don't know how these people have the gall, politicians, to complain when there is a proposal in place to pay out money to the American people, to at least give a proportion, a small percentage of the money that we've paid out back. Because it's not money that's coming directly from their wealth. And all of these people, they're adorned with crazy wealth. All these people, they're coming with platinum blunts in their mouth.
There's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the Doge savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% down to pay back debt and pay down debt, which is, if you look at value, if it were a real estate balance sheet, the debt is tiny, but we still want to pay it down. Doesn't matter. We don't look at it as a piece of real estate. It's America. We're going to get it down through intelligence, hard work, and as Elon said, a word called caring. You have to care. By doing this, Americans will tell us where there's waste. They'll be reporting it themselves. They participate in the process of saving money.
Yeah, it may be lies. It may be all a bunch big publicity ploy. Donald Trump is the biggest showman on the planet. Regardless of what, if you're putting the idea out there and there is somewhat of a possibility for them to issue checks, why are there people saying that supposedly running this government on behalf of American citizens, American residents, people who pay taxes in this country, that are going to say, no, we're not going to put that money into the priority or into the pockets of who should be the priority, which is the American people? Why are they complaining? They're talking about, oh, let's pay off the debt. That's easy to say. Why don't you let people pay off their own debt? Why don't you just forgive everybody's debt? Understand what I'm saying? There shouldn't be complaints about this. How the U.S. plans to commit $55 billion. We discussed this. Look, to Africa over 3 years. This needs to go off the table like right now. There was a news outlet. Oh, NBC. I'll call them out. NBC, they were filming someone out in, I'm not even sure what country in Africa, and the person couldn't get health care. There's people here in this country that can't get health care. Why are you not profiling these people and exposing the lack of health care in this country? And actually calling out the government for cutting off USAID assistance in other countries. You have to resolve the problems that people are encountering here. Take care of your home first. The Bible reads, take the log out of your eye before you take the speck of dust in your brother's. The United States announces more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance to address food insecurity and other needs in Africa. Okay, what about food insecurity here? I said that before. Richest man doubled his fortune, a massive $23 billion bet. Billions to who? Billions to other countries. Let's keep on taking a look. There you go. In 2023, U.S. agencies allotted Israel about $3.3 billion. That's a check on a regular basis. Why does that not go back to the American people? Over the last decade, Israel's typically gotten 8 to 10% of all country-specific foreign aid obligations annually, but that share dropped to around 5%. Palestinian territories accounted for $294 billion in foreign aid obligations in 2023. This is ridiculous. Million. I thought it was billion. Okay, cool. 294 million, which is still too much. Up from 160 million in 2022. In 2023, Ukraine received about 17 billion. And yet you make it so hard for people to apply for grant money here, to get money that they need in order to launch their businesses, to actually continue to become small business owners, which is the largest employing collective body in this country, employing half of the U.S. workforce. In 2023, Ukraine received about 17 billion, more than 1/4 of all aid designated for specific countries. The data shows 17 billion in Ukraine only in 2023. Ukraine first surpassed Israel as the top U.S. aid recipient in 2022 after Russia launched its invasion in February of that year. Okay? Bang. So you see all that money that's going. Weapons, systems, all of this stuff. Yet people here are starving, right? 2023, again, if you go to 2023, we look at 2024 if I'm not mistaken. $68 billion in obligations for 204 countries and regions. President's budget requests are coming from the president, $51 billion. So I'm not even completely sure how this operates. All I know that this government keeps track of money that the United States is paying out on a yearly basis right here, $51 billion. 80 activities. 80 activities. Why don't you do that to fund people's businesses so they can buy businesses? All right? And Dwayne, you want a book? Go ahead and text me. You got the numbers as long as you visit sh0.ai/list. If you want to operate with me, go ahead, join the wait list. As soon as I crack the calendar, this is the Doge website. So you can stay on top of all this stuff. Okay? Could Doge even send out checks? Now, they would need Congress, but of course, they've got the purse. Congress supposedly has the purse. What I'm referring to is right now the executive branch of government has the purse because homeboy came out of his pockets $240 million to put the president in office. Same influence got them the Senate, got them the House of Representatives. Musk's Doge touted slashing an $8 billion contract actually cut $8 million. Okay, so they're fact-checking him on the amount of money that he's saving. The largest canceled federal contract, this was purported to including $8 billion. The most recent version of the contract, 2022 U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agreement with D&G Support Services was for $8 million. Now, look, homeboy's cutting contracts left and right. Of course, you can label them as being fraud and being wasteful. And, I mean, he's taking trips out to space. None of his contracts are getting slashed. I mean, that's just basically the bottom line. You got power to the winner goes the spoils, right? So he's able to manage this in whatever fashion that he seems fit to benefit himself as well. And, you know, because he's not just doing it at the bottom of his heart. He's in a position of unspeakable power. Understand, the leader of the true free world, even when including the $7.9 billion mistake, those are documented canceled contracts, grants, and real estate leases on the walls of receipts page amounted to about $16.5 billion, but nowhere close to $55 billion. So, in other words, this organization is arguing that he hasn't even saved $55 billion. By Wednesday morning, the itemized savings equaled 8.5, excluding $7.99 billion error, and even that total is in doubt given other miscalculations. The mistake raises questions about Doge's accounting and savings claims as the billionaire tech entrepreneur Musk. Now, they're not substantiating this with any When the contract was initially approved, it listed a value of $8 billion. An apparent clerical error for perspective, the entire ICE budget for fiscal year was $8.7 billion. Okay, on January 22nd, 2 days after Trump was sworn in as president, records show the figure was updated and corrected to $8 million. Nevertheless, Doge included the outdated contract in its tally of savings posted Tuesday. The ICE contract was signed in 2022 to support the agency's Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. So far, about $2.5 million has been paid on the contract. Canceling it now saves $5.5 million. D&G, like many federal contractors, benefits from being a small business that is service disabled and veteran owned. Federal contracting data shows the Virginia firm holds $49.2 million in contracts total, most prominently for the U.S. Coast Guard, providing its $18 million in work. D&G Support Services announced that the previously reported contract value of $8 billion was incorrect. The company CEO, Leah Sanders, said, are these the people? This is crazy. Hold on. Are these the people that did that processed the EIDL? D&G, okay. This includes establishing the goals and objectives. I wonder if they got it. Hold on, because I remember there was a Virginia organization that won the contract to process economic injury disaster loans, and they subcontracted it out to Rocket Loans. Craziness when you see what's going on there, but I don't think this is it. So this is not this is not it. Okay, I just wanted it because that would have led me down a different rabbit hole right here. The previously reported contract, okay, said in a statement, this discrepancy appears to have resulted from a clerical error in the original government filing upon contract. The contract value had a ceiling of $8 million. So they're not saving as much as they're reporting. After reporters began questioning the discrepancy, so that's a problem. If you're hoping to get this $5 grand, because if they're only in the millions, then they're not anywhere close to reaching that $22 trillion, right? And they're not even in running to save $2 trillion in 40 months. Okay, so that pokes some holes in the argument, if indeed this fact check holds water. 2 days after Trump was sworn, records show the figure was updated. Okay, so it's $8 million. So it's an $8 million contract, and they got is this a screenshot? Why they make it so small though? At least allow for, they should have a programmer that allow for some. Okay, so right here, base, so it's 8 million base and all options value right here. Okay, so it's $8 million. That's a 10x error right there. So bang, but a link still displays. So how much does let me see. So they project they've only saved how much? 15 billion so far. Let me see. They're still in the billions. Let me see. And listen, I'm not swinging either way. Like I said, I'm apolitical. I'm all for small businesses, the American people. $49.2 million in contracts, most prominently for the U.S. Coast Guard, providing its $18 million in work, was incorrect. That's a crazy contract, 8 billion bones. After reporters began questioning Tuesday night, the figure was corrected to 8 million, but a link still displayed the incorrect $8 billion figure. Okay? Will be maximally transparent with his work and allows the group will make mistakes. Nobody's going to bat 1,000, Musk said last week alongside Trump. We will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct those mistakes. A budget expert and senior fellow at the conservative Manhattan Institute think tank. Now, conservative, it's coming from their side of the aisle. Estimated true savings from Doge's itemized contracts amount to about $4 billion. For example, Riedel said Doge did not factor in obligated funds. The government must still pay even if a contract is canceled. In other words, this instance, Doge tallied the maximum ceiling for a contract even if the entire funding had been obligated. Doge thus far looked like an amateur hour with a lot of Silicon Valley people who just don't have the expertise in federal budget or federal accounting to fully grasp what they're doing. Republican from Ohio, someone who previously worked for Rob Portman. 1,225 canceled contracts, grants, and real estate leases. The largest overall canceled contract was the USAID indefinite delivery contract for 3 companies. Over 65 is the ceiling that can be spent on the contract. So you got to fact check this stuff because if they don't get to the $2 trillion in 40 months, which at this rate, it'll take them that. If they indeed have saved $55 billion, then there's no $5,000 check under these guidelines. Nonetheless, you want to keep in mind that this is the biggest showman probably ever known to man, right? Donald Trump. So he's aiming to do anything that's going to make headlines, that's going to make him a more popular president. And of course, help his dynasty, because you know that he may have sons and daughters and potentially grandchildren who are going to want to make either a career in politics or perhaps at least establish more solid connections among the political sphere by helping other people get elected and be put in a place where the Trump name always stays in power. So you never know. Speaker Johnson said that. What else? What is Doge? So Trump flows to give. So, all right. So it's all the same stuff at this juncture, but you got to poke holes and ensure that they're actually saving the amount of money that they're saving. Because if the plan is to dish out this money, saving $2 trillion, then, and if they haven't saved $55 billion at this juncture, then the rate at which they'll reach $2 trillion is a lot slower than expected. Perhaps it'll even take them longer than the entire Trump administration presidency. And in that particular case, all bets are off unless he gets perhaps the incumbent vice president to get elected. And then we continue on with the same types of policies that put them in power, and the same Elon Musk or anyone that's operating his bag to go ahead and put people in power and have people operating in the way that aligns with the missions of the current administration.